What's up? Welcome to another episode of Updates with Mr. Warford. This is for my AP Human Geography people. So congratulations, we finally ended Unit 2. We're moving on to Unit 3, Cultural Patterns and Processes. This is one of my favorite units that we do all year. Very interesting stuff. Something to keep in mind, this unit has the most chapters and most school days that we're going to use associated with this unit. It's 4 chapters. So last unit you did 2. This time we're going to do 4. This is going to be the most we do all year. So once you get done with this unit, the amount of reading is going to lessen a little bit, okay? So stay on top of your textbook reading. Make sure you're doing your vocab and key questions. If you wait until the night before to do the vocab and key questions, you're going to be in for a long night. So make sure that you are keeping track of that stuff. So today's learning target is we want to watch this video, or if you're in class, we're going to be talking about this in person, but what's the difference between pop culture and folk culture? That's a big staple of this unit that we need to understand. So what is culture in general? And this is one of your vocab terms. It's a group's learned behaviors, actions, beliefs, and objects. So it's visible. It's both visible and invisible. And what I mean by that is it's a visible force seen in people's actions, possessions, and influence on the landscape or the cultural landscape. It's also invisible. It's a force that guides people through shared custom beliefs as well as traditions. So you can see culture with your eyes. You can also kind of feel culture, and it leads people to act a certain way, do certain things. So it's both visible and invisible, if you can believe that. So this says add to your notes, but we're just going to be talking about this. Try to think of as many examples of culture as you can. At this point in your life, you can probably understand what culture is. Let's think about some examples of culture. So if you're watching this video at home, we're going to take a few seconds, think in your brain, and we'll see in the next slide if you got any correct or if you're on the right path. So let's think about that for a second. All right, so what do we think? Did we get any correct? Let's see. We got art, literature, music, dance, food. We've got customs and traditions like beliefs, value systems, economic systems. How do people distribute, consume goods and services? Government is part of culture. What's your historical significance of your government? Language, which we're going to talk about this unit. Religion, which is what we're going to talk about this unit. Social organization, how do families look, how do class systems work, gender roles, and then technology and material culture. What are tangible human creations unique to that culture? So all of this is culture, and I'm sure you got a couple of those correct. There's 2 types of culture that we're going to talk about today, folk or local, and 2 is popular. So what are the difference between folk and popular cultures? So what makes up our popular culture today? We can kind of think about that. And I'm not going to give us a lot of time to sit here and think like I did the previous couple slides, but just think as far as America's pop culture, what do we think of when we think of music, clothes, technology? And one thing you need to know about pop culture is that it changes over time. Pop culture, when you think of pop culture, think of change. So in the 60s and 70s, we got things like bell-bottom pants. We got the emergence of rock and roll music. Well, that kind of happened before that, but it's becoming super popular in the 60s and 70s. People got long hair. Men had long hair and afros. Hitchhiking was a acceptable social thing to do, not so much anymore across a broad span of the population. The hippie movement. Now we skip over to like the early 2000s when I was younger. You've got things like boy bands. You've got, Pop in the Collar. Y'all don't know about that. Look that up. Bigger, like baggy pants, things like that. So popular culture changes. Sometimes it's kind of funny to look back on it as well. So just to see a shift in popular culture, we can think about music. And I would love to play these, but probably can't because of copyright things on YouTube. But if you get a chance, look up these songs. So the number one song in 1962 was by this singing group called the Four Seasons, and the song was called Sherry. Okay, so you see these guys were on top of the world in 1962, super popular. If we skip to the number one song of 2002, it's going to sound a little different. It's a song by a dude named Nelly and a lady named Kelly Rowland called Dilemma. Look that one up. That's a jam as well. But you see that just the aesthetics alone of these singing groups, very different. And also the sound of the music. If you look up these songs on Spotify or something like that, you're going to notice the sound is very different. Things that are popular change. Examples of folk characteristics. So now we're going to change gears and look at folk culture. Like if you look at folk music, it's usually about telling a story, usually about daily activities like farming, mysterious or unexplainable events. Usually comes from anonymous sources, and that it's passed down from years and years and years of family members singing songs. So some of them we don't even know who the author is. Some examples of folk materials, think of like the Amish community making things like furniture, handmade for their community, as well as selling it to other people. That's an example of folk materials. Another example of folk culture in music, this is a jam, Cumberland Gap, okay? We don't know who the author of the Cumberland Gap song is, but it was a regional song about people in the 1700s leaving the 13 colonies to go to Kentucky, okay? It has been played by thousands of people and has its lyrics have been changed over time. And we don't even know who wrote it because it's so old, but that's an example of folk culture, tradition, passed down, not subject to change a lot. Now, the lyrics of this song have been changed a little bit over time, but it has remained as a song about the history of European settlers coming to Kentucky. So what makes pop culture and folk culture different? Local versus pop culture. We've got local culture, local folk culture is about tradition. It's usually rural in nature, non-industrial. It's more conservative and slow to change. It's a homogenous group of people that are together. And it usually happens through relocation diffusion. Now, popular culture is more modern. It's more urban. It's more mass-produced. It's more constantly changing. It's part of a heterogeneous, meaning different groups of people, and it usually happens through hierarchical diffusion. And these slides are going to be posted in Google Classroom so you can study it later, but you need to know the difference between local or folk culture and pop culture. So what we're going to do today is we're going to make some inferences and do some critical thinking. Okay, this unit's going to emphasize a lot of the importance of two processes, isolation and globalization. So some people are going to want to keep their culture isolated so that it doesn't change. Some people are going to want to globalize their culture where it spreads across the world. So what does that look like? What are the consequences of that? We're going to talk about this unit. So on the Google form that I've attached in Google Classroom, you're going to, one, infer which process best fits folk culture, isolation or globalization, and which one best fits pop culture. Then I want you to discuss, using background knowledge or inferences, which one do you think plays a more important role in development of culture? Is it the fact that it spreads, or is it the fact that it remains isolated and grows in that area? I want you to do that in complete sentences, and then you'll be done for today. We're going to continue on with culture, not on Tuesday, but on Wednesday. All right, have a great day. See you.